there's most definitely an effort to de-escalate this because, it was getting out of control, and Trump and the sort of people in the White House could see that, and it wasn't playing well for them in polls.
What's it been like? I mean, the last week. I mean, it comes after a couple of weeks in Minnesota, but the last week, editing a paper, seeing what's happening in Minnesota, seeing how the administration responds to it, seeing how the people on the ground respond to it. What's it been like?
Well, like everything with this administration, the stories change very rapidly. And this one was, it was interesting what happened with this story. There was a lot of disquiet. Certainly in Minnesota, there was huge disquiet, but elsewhere across the country, there was disquiet about what happened with Renee Good. But the activity in Minnesota carried on. Trump very much behind the activity that was taking place there, which had built and built and built in advance of this because of the talk about fraud scandal that was taking place there. So, and everything changed last week with the killing of Alex Pretty. And I think what happened there was Americans are sort of across the political divide had a moment of sort of, well, hang on a minute. We can see with our own eyes what's going on here. And whatever side of the political divide you are, we're not idiots. So don't lie to us. And I think, and also there was just this feeling that things were going too far. And what happened was that people on the right started to, some Republicans started to express concern. So some influential figures like Joe Rogan, for example, on the right, they started to say, this isn't America, this isn't right, And then very interestingly, the gun lobby inserted itself into the debate, which really sort of confused things because the gun lobby suddenly thought, well, if this man, Alex Pretty, is being criticized for carrying a gun to a protest, which in America certainly in Minnesota is legal. That's wrong. He was legally carrying a weapon. So it all got very confused. But big picture, there was, the disquiet that this was going too far was spreading across the political spectrum. And Trump, I think, realized, or the sort of people around him realized that this was not polling well widely.
But he doesn't know what to do about it, does he, Emma? Because what strikes me watching his statements, even in the last 48 hours, is I think the fact that this guy's works in a VA hospital, carrying a gun, means it's very hard to paint him in purely left v right terms, as you're just saying. But Trump is kind of saying, well, he shouldn't have carried a gun. But that is fundamentally in opposition to Republican thinking and quite mainstream American thinking, isn't it?
Well, I think to be honest, I think it's really hard for non-Americans to get their head around this because already the whole kind of gun culture thing in America is it's odd. It's peculiar for people who, for Europeans. And then it gets even more confused when, as you say, Stig, in the middle of all this, Trump suddenly sounds a bit kind of liberal or sort of anti-gun by saying, well, he shouldn't have been carrying a gun. And that's when the gun lobby are like, well, hang on a minute. He was legally entitled to carry a gun. And by the way, they have an open carry law, which means you're allowed to sort of carry a gun openly. He didn't draw it. It was there. He definitely was carrying a gun, but he didn't have it in his hand. Interestingly, actually tonight, I don't know if you've seen or, in the last few hours, some new footage has appeared of Alex Pretty. He was sort of having an altercation with some ICE officers on January the 13th, where he was sort of spitting and he kicked the tail light and he was clearly sort of, out to disrupt what they were doing. Again, you can see his gun, but he's got nothing in his hands. So I think that, in this weird world we live in, that'll likely spark a whole new round of debate where, was he interfering with law and order? He shouldn't have been there, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, the whole thing is just sort of mind-blowingly awful, if you like, because at the end of the day, you do wonder where this is all going to end. It's all getting very heated. Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, he's given an interview to The Atlantic. I just happened to see it before I came on, where he's openly talking about there being civil war in the US right now. So some of the language surrounding this is getting very, very hyperbolic.
And yet Trump is trying to sort of walk it back a little bit. I'm very intrigued to know what does that mean for, because we see Stephen Miller here saying seeming to say crazy things, and then Kristi Noem saying the same thing. Oh, I wonder whether is it as straightforward as Trump going to cut them loose? Is Trump going to have to cut them loose?
Everyone is saying at the moment that that Bovino, who is the border patrol chief, is very much on the way out now, and Trump has sent this man Tom Homan, who's his border czar, who he's been arguing for a more methodical approach right from the start. He's spoken to Tim Walz. He's more experienced. I think it's safe to say he approaches this in a more professional way. And as I say, he's been advocating for a much more targeted approach. So he's now been sent in. The rhetoric coming out of the White House has lessened. It's sort of, they've taken the heat out of some of it, and generally speaking, there is a sort of calmer atmosphere. Certainly in Minnesota today, what we heard from our reporters there was in Minneapolis, things were much calmer. So I think there's most definitely an effort to de-escalate this, because it was getting out of control, and Trump and the sort of people in the White House could see that, and it wasn't playing well for them in polls. So
is that true?
Yeah.
Well, does that lead us cynically to say Trump has then talked about Iran again, having gone very quiet on Iran again, and now there's an armada getting close to Iran? Is now a good time to have a good little war? Is that too cynical?
Stig, I listen. Whether it's cynical or not, it wouldn't be surprising. What Trump, what he tends to do, what I've noticed since in the sort of year of covering him, he drops out hints. He drops hints. He talks about what might or might not happen, and then usually when people are looking the other way, he takes the world by surprise. I don't know what the plan is for Iran, and nobody. Well, I mean, some people must know.
Well, maybe they don't.
It's certainly true that tonight there was more talk of these warships being sent there. So anything could happen. I mean, look, he's annoyed. Trump is annoyed that the sort of bad news coming out of Minneapolis is detracting from what he sees as a huge success story on immigration. I mean, the census numbers were out in the US in the last 24 hours, and they showed, that it's having an effect. The jobs numbers are also showing this. So he's frustrated because one of his big pledges was he was going to get immigration down. He has done that, but then these sort of awful killings that have been coming out of Minnesota have very much got in the way of the good news message that he wanted to convey.
What does the administration make of you, Emma? And because the Journal is a very proud newspaper, independent-minded, fair. I think I think from my reading of it. So you cover the stories. You go in hard when there's a thing to go in hard about. But you're a Brit. Do you get a load of grief from the administration? Do you get someone senior calling you up and saying, what the hell are you doing, Emma? What, you don't understand any of this stuff? What's it like being a Brit leading an institution when there's a very antagonized administration? We've all seen the Levitt briefings. We all see what Miller says, what some of these characters say. Do you get a lot of grief?
No, not really. I mean, I get some. I mean, he occasionally, Trump says publicly some disobliging things about the Wall Street Journal. I mean, actually, quite often. But he's always accusing us of being China loving, which is. I mean, but then again, in Davos, he cited a piece we'd done about China and energy. This was the hilarious thing was. He cited this piece saying, I've read this piece in the Wall Street Journal, and he sort of cited it in order to back up this sort of sense of urgency around the need to create more energy in America because China's, increasing its energy capacity much faster than America. But when we actually published that piece, he'd sent out a Truth Social criticizing the piece, saying, once again, the lying Wall Street Journal has written a China-loving piece. Anyway, it didn't matter because, the piece was good, it was honest reporting, and it was pointing out some factual, the facts about what's going on. So, listen, I think maybe it's an advantage to me because I can genuinely, I have no skin in this game other than as a journalist. So perhaps it's easier for me to stay a little bit at arm's length from it all, given that I'm not actually American.
And just finally, is he panic? Is there a sense of panic a bit that the midterms are coming? This, as you say, immigration should be a massive success. It's turned horrible through how the administration has described these terrible events. The economy is a bit of a worry. They've not fixed the foreign policy things they said they were going to fix. A lot of sound and fury signifying very little. Is there do you sense an administration starting to panic?
I wouldn't say they're panicking. I wouldn't at all. But as you say, these midterms are looming, and I think one of the frustrations that Trump himself has is that he feels that a lot of the measures he's taken to, on the economy won't bear fruit. Let's presuppose that they would bear fruit, but they won't do it in time for him to reap the benefit of the midterms. Now, a lot of Americans are about to get big tax rebates in their paychecks over the next few weeks, months, as a result of legislation that this administration brought in, and so that's one thing that people will notice. The question, though, is will they still remember that come November? I mean, November's a long way off. And a lot of things, we're only a month in. So imagine what else could happen between now and November. So I think, honestly, Stig, we're in such an odd political environment here. It's very difficult to make any predictions at all. I mean, the polling isn't looking great for Trump, but his base is still all in, and it would be too easy to dismiss the fact that a lot of what he's doing, there is a very big part of America that really approves of it.
And that's still the same. Emma, it's so interesting speaking to you. We're very grateful to you for staying up to talk to us, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Stig.